I have a love-hate relationship with Annie. Annie used to be a musical that I absolutely loved, and then I was in a production of it at school. I played Duffy, and now I really do not like it. That being said, although I don't really watch the actual musical itself anymore, I do love seeing it on stage, and I do love the soundtrack. So I thought I'd just take a few minutes today to share which songs I particularly like, and whether or not I feel like this should have been remade. If you haven't seen Annie, the 1982 film is actually based on the 1977 Broadway film, the Broadway musical. I wasn't actually aware that the stage version came first, so that was quite interesting to learn. And now that I'm thinking, how does this compare to the stage version? I think the stage version is obviously great, but with this film, we get to visit some sets that we obviously wouldn't get to see on stage. We get to see the huge home of Oliver Warbucks, and it really compares quite well to the gritty, metallic orphanage, and I think that works better on film. Maybe it's just because I'm used to that more, I don't know, but personally I think the set design on film is more effective and really highlights the contrast between the two much more effectively. Not that I've seen it on Broadway. The Broadway set design could be a lot more colossal, but the Amdram versions that I've seen are relatively mediocre. If you haven't seen the film, basically Annie is a young orphan and she stays with Miss Hannigan, and one day she is taken away to be almost like a publicity stunt, and she goes to meet Oliver Warbucks, and basically she doesn't want to leave, and she meets Grace, who is Warbucks' secretary, and suddenly Warbucks starts to really like Annie. But there are things that can get in the way of Annie's future, particularly her parents, who obviously are not in the picture. She is an orphan, but the concept of her parents can get in the way of Annie's happiness, and the whole film is, will she finally get away from Miss Hannigan in the children's home, or will things stop her from being happy? And it is a very emotional film, despite the fact that it's obviously a very gritty narrative that could evoke a lot of emotions. I actually don't think it's that emotional, because Annie is a very tough, rugged, rough around the edges character. So while it's easy to feel sorry for her, I don't think, I've never cried at Annie, to the best of my knowledge. I was scared. One of the scenes towards the end where she is, I'm trying not to spoil it, where she's up quite high, that really scared me, and I wasn't a fan of that scene. That bit works better in the film. But I've never really cried at it. But it is, there are some twists and turns in this. But I think one of the main reasons why Annie is, or has always been, a successful film is because of Aileen Quinn. This little red-headed, curly-haired girl who's very much like the Tracy Beaker of her decade. She's cheeky, she's feisty, she's fiery, she's lovable. She's not my favourite character, but she is certainly very well acted. And she has a very, very lovely voice. The rest of the cast is great as well. When I watched this film when I was younger, none of the cast meant anything to me. I hadn't heard of Albert Finney. I hadn't heard of Tim Curry. I didn't know who Bernadette Peters was. So as a child, it wasn't really the cast that ever made any difference to me. But I think as an adult viewer who has seen this film many, many times, watching clips of it now, it just gives me, another dimension and that little bit of extra something that I can enjoy now as an adult. The soundtrack is brilliant and it is addictive. And honestly, having been in a production of this, it just really annoys me now. But it is great. Obviously, we have the classics like Tomorrow, Maybe, It's a Hard Knock Life. But actually, one of my favourites is I Think I'm Gonna Like It Here. I think that's really underrated, and I absolutely love that. Same with You're Never Fully Dressed Without a Smile. It's just so lively and engaging, and it's brilliant. And I guess ultimately one of the best songs is I Don't Need Anything But You. It's very sentimental. I think the character development of Oliver Warbucks in this is brilliant. He never really loses who he is. Instead, he just finds something extra. And I love that. And I love Grace. I absolutely really adored Grace as a character. She's played by Carol Burnett. She's played by Anne Reinking. Carol Burnett plays Miss Hannigan, who's obviously absolutely sensational. and she just does an absolutely incredible job. I've just realised that Anne Reinking, who played Grace, actually passed away last month, December 2020, aged 71. That's unfortunate. It's a brilliant cast, very well cast, very well acted, brilliant performances, fabulous vocals, sentimental when it needs to be, lively when we need that little bit of magic. Aileen Quinn is sensational as Annie. Yes, I actually enjoyed the remake, by which I mean the remake from a few years ago, not the remake that was made a few years after this one. That's just irrelevant and is not part of this. The film, though, is great. If you haven't seen it, do watch it. If you want to be in a version of it, it will dampen your experience of the film. I would love to see it on stage in a big budget production. But for now, I'm quite happy with revisiting the soundtrack, if not the film in its entirety.